In today's video, I'm going to try to survive 100 days in Minecraft's hardcore mode. My goal is to build a farm by the end, with incredible buildings that make this world even more beautiful and valuable. Luckily for me, I had already spawned in a snowy taiga biome, so I gathered some wood, crafted a wooden pickaxe, and went to collect some cobblestone. Then, I upgraded our starting tools and collected some spruce saplings to plant at our future base. Next, I start looking for some sheep and politely ask for their help in making a bed. With the bed made, I now need to find a better place to build and get out of this snow biome. On the way, I ended up killing some cows so I could have something to eat, and as I was starting to get hungry, I decided to take a break so I could put the meat to roast, and I ended the first day collecting some more wood. On day 2, I continued looking for a nice place to build our farm, and when I found some coal along the way, I decided to collect it. Every time I found an animal, I found a way to collect some resources, until, after walking a lot, I found an illager post, but I decided not to venture out for sure for now. As if finding an illager post wasn't enough, I found a second one as well, and I even came across a village that gave me just 2 pieces of armor and a cell, which would be very useful in the future. After borrowing some basic resources from the villagers here, I decided to continue advancing towards my main objective. Along the way, I ended up coming across a second village on top of a large piece of land next to the sea, and it was here that I decided to start my farm. I also took the opportunity to borrow some iron from our friend here, and started working on our mining area. So, I made some chests just to start storing, and continued digging in a way that looked quite natural. After I was happy enough with the entrance to the mine, I used the dirt to mark where some pillars would go, and soon after I started digging, I came across this small cave, and with all the care in the world, I started placing torches in every corner I found. After lighting up enough, I collected some resources that I found, such as iron, coal, and also some copper. I thought it best to keep digging down to see what I could find, until I came across an even larger cave, and was unsure whether or not I should risk exploring it. After that, I put some iron to melt, and with them I make a bucket to collect water, and I made some armor pieces too. On my way back, I put some stairs to make it easy to get down here again. I got some water and decided to venture into that cave. After making the last piece of my armor, I made a shield as well, and drew courage from where I had none to explore. As soon as I got down, I started running desperately, placing torches everywhere I could, especially because we're talking about a hardcore world where I can't die. My adventure through the cave continued for a long time, and even the creepers helped me defeat the skeletons. Afterwards, I start picking up some materials that were nearby, but always being very careful, and I end up finishing my day sleeping in this cozy cave full of monsters. Returning to the surface, I start working again in our mining area, collect some spruce wood that I had planted earlier, and plant a large tree. I ended up putting the furnaces in the wrong place, so it was time to fix that little mistake. And as soon as the big tree grew, I immediately cut it down to have more materials to work with, but I ended up having to sleep on top of it at the end of the day. Returning to the mining area, I start breaking up the floor so I can replace it with dirt. I collect some sand too, and I start transforming some dirt into mud so I can use it in the future. After that, I go back to that little cave at the beginning of the mine to get some gravel, and I take the opportunity to get some more ores as well. Back home, I make some coarse dirt and start adding some color to our mine, along with some slabs, along with other things to enhance the environment even more. I saw this idea on the cryptozoology channel, so credit goes to him. Then, I started to change the rough shape of our mine a little bit to make it look more natural, and I added some barrels as well, and some villagers ended up working on our mine. Early on the 9th, I have breakfast and go chop down some spruce trees, and replant them again. Since there were a lot of villagers around, I decided to change their profession to something more useful to me, turning them all into fletchers so I can trade with them. This process would end up helping me a lot in the future, and I even get an iron sword with looting in the enchantment of a second villager, and I decide to end the day collecting some more wood as well. After that, I transform my wood and start trading with the villagers a little more, and again I go down to the cave from before to finish lighting the rest of the place, and also collect some ores along the way. I had reached the deep slate layer, which was exactly what I was looking for, but I think I ended up wasting a lot of time just staying in that place. Arriving home, I get some more iron, and start to tear down some buildings in this village so that I can transform it into my private farm. Unfortunately, knocking down so many houses with starting materials wasn't as quick as I thought it would be, but I remained firm in my goal, so much so that I spent a good amount of time just doing that. Finally, I decided to go back to the cave, but this time in the deep slate layer, and I got a fright from a bat that made me miss it without me wanting it to. My stay here didn't last long, and I continued to find a way to finish knocking down the remaining houses. Then I used all the materials I had obtained to be able to trade with the villagers, and I also made a toolmaker's table so that I would have good tools for mining and cutting down trees. Unfortunately, on the 15th, a storm happened and I had to sleep before the day was really over, and I managed to get a perfect iron pickaxe for only 15 emeralds. I then made an anvil and turned my iron sword into looting too. Luckily for me, the toolmaker had an interesting axe for a reasonable price. I decided to buy some as well. I then upgraded my pickaxe to efficiency 4, and now I had an excellent companion for the rest of the series, as well as some diamond shovels. I think capitalism is the best thing there is. While I was collecting some wood, I thought it would just become memories at that moment, so much so that I was even a little paralyzed by what happened, and my work that day was just cutting down the trees and planting them again. The reason was clear: to trade with the villagers again, and when I have good enough tools, I will be able to speed up my construction process a lot. And I also took the opportunity to get some more iron, and I transformed my shovel into efficiency 3, and my axe 2, which was already very good. In those first few days, the process of collecting wood and trading with the villagers repeated itself a lot, until I had finally started to do some work on leveling the land where the main house on my farm would be. Since I already had good tools, now it was finally time to go collect some main materials so that I could build the first farmhouse, and in this process I ended up finding some diamonds as well while I was collecting tough blocks and deep slates. When I got back home, there were a few monsters around, so I quickly took care of them. After that, I spent some time sorting out the materials I would need to use for this house, which ended up taking a bit longer than I actually thought, and this is the majority of the total materials. Finally, after so much time just collecting, I start working on building my main house, which I confess was much more boring to build than in creative mode. But I think it was time to get used to this kind of thing. I just didn't expect that it would take me between 5 to 7 days to complete just one house, and to add a little more value to it, I decided to add a lake right next to it, which ended up matching it very well, and to further improve this brief lake, I added some vegetation with some spruce details, matching the environment perfectly. Unfortunately, I ended up forgetting to record some things that happened up until day 34, but it wasn't anything major that we ended up losing because of that, thank goodness. On day 34, I decided to explore the cave a little more and found a well-equipped zombie, but I continued exploring and collecting some minerals that I could find along the way, until I realized that this cave was much bigger than I had actually thought. I had made a sugarcane plantation in those days that I had not recorded, and I decided to expand it even more. Then, I collect some wheat from my small plantation and replant them again, until I decide to start working with the villagers for real, thus creating an area for them to stay and for me to make trades in a simpler way. Despite being a relatively simple area, I actually quite liked the shape the place was taking, but as there were some materials missing that I could get, I thought it best to go and look for them before actually finishing my exchange area, and now I was happy with how things had turned out. Afterwards, I decided to lower the ceiling of the trading area a little more, as an iron golem had appeared down here, and I continued to work on the villagers' area itself, which now only lacked the villagers, so I dedicated a good amount of time working on their transportation. Working with villager transport without any mods to help is really annoying, and I was starting to regret having invented this trading area. I spent a long time trying to get a single villager to go down there, so much so that I even had time to harvest my wheat again, but I still hadn't managed to make the blessed one stay there permanently. Then I started to work a little again on the earthworks of my land, before I lost my patience, and again a storm came up. My attempt now was to try to get the villagers to reproduce, and when I say that I really need to learn how to play this game properly, I'm not joking. Then, I start preparing the place where I'm going to put the villagers so they can repopulate the world, at least theirs, and there I go again after the one who kept running away and didn't want to work where I told him to, until I finally managed to make him stay inside. Then, I start to get my tracks back finally, but the blessed one ran away because of a mistake I made, and the other one almost ran away too, but I was barely able to make them go back to the multiplication area. On day 42, I start my day by collecting some wheat and feeding my only 2 sheep that I had in this world, and I decide to also collect some of the sugarcane that I had planted previously, and I thought it best to wait a little until the sheep had big wool to be harvested again. After making a few more beds to see if the villagers from before would be able to reproduce, unfortunately that wasn't the case for now. So, I decide to go on an adventure around the world to see what I would be able to find out there, and I end up coming across a cherry biome and picking up some saplings from that tree, which could be very useful in the future if I wanted to give our village a different look. In this process, I end up coming across a cave as well and decide to collect more minerals, because there is never too much mineral and it is always good to have some left over. I even came across a cave that had some stalactites. I don't know if that was the real name, but I decided to collect all the ones I found along the way, or most of them at least, and I even found my first emerald ore. As I explored the area, I unfortunately wasn't able to find as much good stuff as I was hoping for, at least not until the end of the day, when I found a huge valley that would have been perfect for our farm here. At that point, I even regretted not having looked for longer, and I ended the day in this beautiful valley. Since there was no point crying over spilt milk, I thought it best to continue exploring a little further and found a ruined portal as well, but it had nothing to offer. After finding another village, I borrowed some resources that I didn't intend to return, and decided to make my way all the way back to my house. At the beginning of day 46, I had finally arrived at the farm, and I decided to add the stalactites that I had collected earlier in our mining area, which added a lot of value to the ambience of the place. Then I made some more bread and gave it to the previous villagers to see if they would finally be able to reproduce, and I started changing the material on the sides to glass so it would be easier to see. Then I collected some more wood, replanted it, collected some more wood, and repeated this until my axe's durability was worn down enough. Then, I repair it on my anvil, along with my best pickaxe, and decide to trade some more with the villagers. It was time to change the floor of my main house, since I ended up putting it off for a long time until now, and I finally started working on it. I also spent some time working on the decoration of the house and what I would do to fill the empty space in it, and I started working on the storage area in the lower part of the house, and when I went back to see how the villagers were doing, I saw that I still hadn't had any success in reproducing them. So I add some beds nearby to see if it would work now, and work some more on my house, but now outside, adding another area for planting, and end the day by feeding my sheep again. At the beginning of day 49, I collect my sugarcane and go back to work on decorating the house, but this time where the furnaces would be, and after adding the last furnaces, there were only 2 more rooms left to decorate. Next, I start to plan out roughly where the bathroom would be, and although it has no use in the gameplay itself, I really enjoy doing this kind of decoration. It didn't take long for me to finish the bathroom, and I finished adding the final details to it the next morning. On the same day 50, I also work on the upper room, where I transformed it into just one large storage area, and I take the opportunity to finish the bathroom with some carpets. Unfortunately, while I was recording, the power went out here at my house and I lost the recording file until day 56. But I came to another village so I could transform some villager who could give me the mending exchange, and I bought several books, and returned home after getting what I wanted. Once there, I added the enchantment to my axe first, and when I got to where the villagers were, I noticed that there was a new baby there, so finally my manual villager farm was working perfectly. On day 57, I gathered 2 shovels and upgraded them to efficiency 3, which would help me a lot. I also gave some bread to the villagers to keep breeding, and started working on the earthworks once again, since I could use this area to do something I had in mind. By the end of all this, my shovel was almost broken, and I used the dirt I had collected to fix some damage to the terrain as well. I spent some time playing around with this earth-moving thing, but I liked the result I was able to achieve. At the beginning of the day I was planning where 2 fountains would go embedded in the wall that I decided to make, and after that, I started changing the materials in the area where the fountains would be embedded, breaking up a bit where I wanted the water to be, and continuing to work on adding texture to make the place more beautiful. After working on the 2 fountains, it was finally time to fill the area with water, so I started adding some depth details inside where the water from the fountain itself would be, and filled it all in with water. A quick tip in case you wanted to know, the quickest and most effective way to fill these areas is to start from the lowest floor and the corners. On day 61, I start storing some things that I wouldn't use anymore for now, and again I do some earth-moving work, but this time just some repairs next to the main house, and I even found a zombie that is immune to sunlight. Could it be that he had the secret that Musen was looking for all this time? Then I cut down some more trees, but this time I'm very careful not to fall, and I always remember to plant the seedlings again too, and I end the day working on the fencing of some specific areas of the farm. I also make this same enclosure around the main house, and start clearing the land and making some paths to where the farmhouse's private stables would be, although I won't be taking any horses there. In this entire area that was clear, I started to dig some holes so I could put water in it and work on the plantation, and after adding some slabs to the water, I started to plow the land to receive the seeds that I had. After planting some seeds, I also make some seats in the area I recently fenced off, and feed my sheep, who definitely needed a cozier home for themselves. Returning to the villagers, the baby was no longer a baby and had finally grown up, and after watching the villagers about to multiply again, unfortunately nothing happened. To improve the situation, I thought it would be best to put some more beds, so I started to tidy up the area where they were so I could accommodate some more babies there. With everything tidy, I still needed some ferns and also some sweet berries that I didn't have yet, so I went looking for a taiga biome without snow to see if I could find something similar. Luckily for me, I was able to easily find the 2 things I was looking for, and after collecting everything I returned home, I also picked up some seaweed along the way to add to our sources, and up until now that I remember there are 4 in total on this map alone, and I found an underwater portal, but it had nothing good to offer. As soon as I got home again, I started working on where the sweet berry farms would be, more or less, and after positioning everything I went to see if the villagers had multiplied, but nothing had happened yet. Taking advantage of the good day, I planted some berries, added the algae to the fountains I made before, and took the opportunity to collect some more wood to trade with the villagers and get a diamond pickaxe with silk touch. I intended to make a sort of manual honey farm in this world, but inside a basic greenhouse, so I set out in search of some beehives so I could collect them with my silk touch tool. In this process, I even found a really big cave that I was tempted to run away from, so I gave in to temptation and ran away from it. I'm not going to risk losing a world with so much gameplay time for nothing. By the end of the day, I had gotten 6 beehives in total, which was more than enough for what I needed, and when I finally got home, I started trying to get the fortune enchantment from the unemployed villager who didn't want to work yet. I spent a long time looking for this blessed enchantment, and the villager didn't want to sell me a single item that I was looking for, until finally on day 68 he decided to get the blessed enchantment that I wanted. Now I had the good enchantments, but I didn't have enough experience to be able to improve my pickaxes, and after getting some wood I went back to do some trades again with my friends at the glassworks. But I forgot that I had the axe equipped in my hand, and it ended up being repaired because of the mending enchantment. Yeah, I've made that mistake several times in this world. Early in the day, while I was doing my things, I end up finding a creeper patrolling the area, and I easily take him down, and after that I finish planting my missing berries, and go back to the cave to collect some ores, but now with my tool with Fortune 2 enchantment. Unfortunately, my inventory was filling up too quickly because of the copper, so I started using Silk Touch to break down the ores and use them later when I was at home or needed them. As I explored, I discovered even more places to do some research, and I met a creeper who ended up hurting me a little in the process, and I even ended up sleeping in the cave that day. After that, I melt some copper and break some coal to help me in this process. Using my hoe with Fortune 2 as well, I collect enough seeds for my crops to finish planting everything that was missing, both potatoes and carrots, and I throw everything that is left to the villagers so that they can reproduce a lot too. To end the day, I end up collecting some more wood, and at the beginning of day 71 I continue working on collecting materials, but this time to be able to make the place where our sheep and also our horses would be. After a while, I start collecting some oak wood too, practically doing a general deforestation in that specific area of the map, but it's just so I can plant it later in another more appropriate place. While I was at home, it had started to rain, but it wasn't a storm, so I continued my material collection, until while I was collecting the deep slates I found some more diamond, which is never bad. Right at the entrance of our mine, I was hearing a lot of zombie sounds and decided to look, although I didn't find anything there. At the beginning of day 74, I even tried looking to see what I could find, but I didn't find any monsters nearby, and these are pretty much all the materials I needed to start building again. At this point, I decided to free the sheep temporarily, while some ended up becoming resources so that I could continue with my constructions. This first building would be where the sheep and some cows would stay in the future, so I needed it to be a little bigger than the second one. The second one will be the area where my horses will actually stay, even though I have already done something similar in the main house. It took me a few days to complete everything, but nothing as long as the first building itself. By day 75 I had finished where the sheep would be, so I gathered some wheat and took them to their new refuge. Then I removed the sugar canes from their old place, and started working on the second building I had mentioned before, even though it was raining. On day 77 I had already finished both buildings quickly, and after fixing the roof of the inside of the stable, I breed my sheep again so that they would be well fed. Since I would also need a lot of glass for my next construction, I already start collecting the sand that I would need in the future, and after melting it and turning it into glass, I start collecting the materials again on day 78. But before that, I harvest some beets that I had planted with my blessed hoe, and I replant everything again, fully completing the farm this time. Then I started working on some small parts of the land just to be able to fix some things that were bothering me, which ended up taking more soil than I really expected to be able to fix, something around a few packs of soil. Then I used the soil itself to make the layout and mark where my greenhouse would be, and by the time I got the layout right, it had already gotten dark. At the beginning of day 79, I wasn't liking the way the roads were looking, so I went back to the cave with my diamond shovel to get some gravel and make coarse dirt to change the material of the roads, and again I found another unexplored part of my private cave. I stayed in the cave collecting gravel so long that I ended up finding more diamonds, and by the time it was time to go home it was already dark. Luckily for me, when I woke up, there were several villagers just waiting to trade, so my farming had finally worked perfectly. Early in the morning, I started searching the area to see if there were any dangerous monsters that could blow everything up, and I ended up finding a skeleton that was immune to sunlight as well. Musin is falling behind. It seems the guys here at mine are well advanced. That day, I thought it was time to start working on the new streets of my farm, so I started turning several blocks of dirt into mud, to later turn into clay blocks or something similar. The name is mud bricks, that's all I know. I spent a lot of time doing this, practically a whole day, and I finally started working on my street renovation, which was definitely not to my liking. Replacing the streets was the easiest thing to do so far in this world, and I even deactivated the nether portal I had recently made. I didn't show it before because it was just when the power went out and I lost the recording of the video, but I guarantee that I didn't get anything good there, besides some scares that I would have preferred to have avoided. Even though I said it was easy to replace the streets, again it took me longer than I would have liked. But what matters is that in the end everything worked out, thanks to me. At the beginning of day 83, I make some copper trapdoors and start putting them into the berry farm, although I still need a few to complete everything. To complete, I take the copper ores that I had in the chest and break them with my fortune pickaxe, and put the ores to smelt while I focus on something else. I was bored, so I decided to chop down some more trees, and after my glass was all melted, I started looking for the white dye, which unfortunately I was missing and I didn't have enough of yet. Before that, I removed the beets that I had placed in this area in front of the house and replaced them with wheat, since I had another use for them later on. I continued to search for some resources for the new construction, so there wasn't much new besides that, and the next day I went to look for the rest of the white dyes that I needed to be able to make the greenhouse glass. After turning all the regular glass into white glass, I was now ready to finally make my greenhouse. Although I usually make more elaborate constructions in creative, since in survival it is difficult to collect some materials, I was working with things that were easier to get. I don't know how long it took me exactly, but by day 87 the greenhouse was practically finished, at least with the main things inside, which were the bees and some flowers for them. Unfortunately, I ended up hitting one of them by accident, and they all came at me. At that moment I thought it would really be my end, so much so that I had just given up, but I was left with only one heart of life. Since there were still some who were angry, I waited for them to calm down. That's why they say you need to wear safety gear when handling bees. Then, I finish adding a few more leaves to the area, and I put the rest of the stuff in the trunk at home, and I get some leaves so I can finish decorating the inside of the greenhouse, which was completely bare. At the beginning of day 88, I took some honey and applied it to the copper trapdoors so they wouldn't rust, and I finished applying some depth details that I had forgotten to put in the greenhouse. Back in that cave from the beginning of the video, I was trying to find the place where the monsters were hiding, until I finally found it, and I lit up the whole place so they wouldn't show up there again. The next morning, I harvested my wheat and replanted it again, and took the opportunity to build some beehives that were missing from my greenhouse. Once again, I accidentally hit one of them, but this time I was quicker and didn't risk my life. Then I give them some flowers to calm them down a bit, collect some honey, tidy up where the flowers were, and also put some trapdoors where the fires would be in the future. From there, I breed my sheep again and start working on the path that led to my greenhouse, but this time I do it in a new style. It was already day 90 and I still hadn't finished making all the roads, but don't worry, even if it goes wrong, it will still work. Then I make some hives again, but I only take what is necessary to finish the greenhouse once and for all, and with that I am happy to say that now everything is working as it should. At least for now. After finishing putting up the missing copper trapdoors, I add some lanterns to light up where the fountains were, and breed my sheep again, and also some bees after that. Starting on day 91, I started working out exactly where the new beetroot plantation would be, which I hadn't yet added to its proper place. These would be exactly around the main house's land, so I needed to find a way to hide the water in some specific places on the plantation. I thought this old path was really messing up the landscape, so I found a way to fix just the essentials here to turn everything into grass blocks, since I still didn't know what I was going to build for this side in the future, in case there's a part 2 of this video. As I mentioned before, there were 4 fountains in this world alone, all built into the wall, so it was time to start working on them. So I spent some time making the path that would go around one of these fountains, made the path itself with the coarse dirt and mud bricks, worked again on my plantations near my house, fixed the paths that were there too, and went back to the plantation again. After wasting a lot of time, I finally refocus on what I needed, which were the built-in fountains, and I start adding the water and the necessary details for its ambience. Right at the beginning of day 94, I continue working on the beet plantations. I reproduce some bees so that they can give me more honey, and I collect honey from them again again to apply to the copper trapdoors that still needed to be applied. It was only here that I discovered that it was possible to accidentally return them to their normal state with an axe, so I didn't even need to go through all this despair to stop them from rusting. I only had sheep on my farm, so I thought it was time to at least have a pet, and I started looking for some salmon to get a kitten, and the first one I saw, I ran desperately after him, and I managed to make a new friend. I left it right at the entrance to our villagers' area so no creepers could get in. I took some more honey, applied it to the copper plates once more, and ended the day collecting some weeds to improve the ambience of the streets in the future. As I mentioned when setting the streets, right at the beginning of this new day, I work on adding grass and ferns in the middle of them, to break up the brown tone a little and create something a little more natural and set. To give even more life to the streets of my farm, I start adding some details with leaves, barrels, chests, and lanterns. This really enhances the streets and helps to break up the empty and vegetation-free pattern, giving much more depth to even the buildings. I even applied this technique around one of the fountains I made, and while it was raining I took the day off to feed my sheep, and I also took the rest of the day off to go after some cows that we still had to have in our little barn. They were walking so slowly in the water that it took a while to get them there. To my dismay, I discovered the hard way that, although the sheep would not walk over the carpet I had placed on the fence, the baby sheep did, and several ended up escaping. I didn't even know what to do now, and I recommend you close your eyes, since strong scenes happen next. After tidying up all this mess, I finally took the only cell I had and went looking for a horse too, at least one to put there. But when I saw that he was too slow, I ended up freeing him and choosing another one, which even had a baby with it, but the baby ended up adopting another one as a father or mother. Arriving at the farm, I put my new friend in the central stable, and go back to the cave to get some more tough blocks to make my next fountain, which I still needed to make. With the tough blocks in hand, I started to despair, since there was only a little time left to finish the challenge, and there were still a few things I needed to do. Then I add some tough block details to break up the texture of the walls that only had dirt, and I do the same with that first fountain that I had made before, which only had dirt in it until now. Taking advantage of the momentum, I didn't waste any time and added these same details to the new built-in fountain I was making, but before adding the water to make it easier. After filling the space with water, all that was left was to add the depth details inside it. By the end of that day, I felt I was ready enough to finally go after some monsters during the night, and I did so just to recover some of the durability of my iron pickaxe. At first things were going pretty well, but things started to get complicated when some zombies surrounded me and I started running desperately for my life, afraid of losing my world that was almost 100 days old. I didn't even look back at that time. I just ran home and tried to sleep right away. On the morning of day 98, a baby came to demand satisfaction from me, and this is one of the worst animals in the game for you to beat. After eliminating some imminent threats scattered around the world, I add some seaweed to the fountains to give them more health, and sprinkle some bone meal as well to give my fountains more value. Not content with how the place's ambience was completely devoid of trees, I took several saplings that I had with me in my trunks and started planting them around the main house, so that the place would be at least a little more valuable, and I also planted them in other parts of the map. At the end of the day, I used the experience from the ores I had melted to repair my best axe I had so far, and I even watched the sunset for a bit with these beautiful shaders. On the morning of the 99th, I needed to find a way to remove these trees from here, so I dedicated a good part of the day to just removing these trees from the site, which took up a lot of my time. It started to rain and I was thankful it wasn't a storm, but I saw an idea to make a map to see how everything was going, which I also saw on the channel of the guy I recommended to you before, so I went looking to see how the maps were going, and at the beginning of day 100, I managed to capture another kitten to be my new companion, but this one would be protecting my house. To top it off, I made a small mural and put the maps with our buildings there, and what a huge satisfaction it was to see how everything was looking from a different perspective. Then I take the day to rest a little and enjoy each construction I made, walking around the map and admiring my work, which I know could have been even better, but I believe I managed to do a lot within my capabilities, and that is the most important thing. Remembering that this map will be available for you to download on my Patreon, exactly as I left it at the end of the video, and to finish, I make an armor banner and retire my Iron Warrior armor, which held up with me until the end of the video without breaking, and I decide to end the day just watching the beautiful sunset, which as some of you already know, is my favorite time of day, both in real life and in games. And I want to give a special thanks to all my Patreons who have supported my work there, allowing me to continue producing videos like this.